Hi and welcome to another episode with Bourbon Hunter UK. Now in the last video I released, I did a review of Western Gold, a 5-year-old bourbon from Lidl's of all places, which I can thoroughly recommend as a cheap bourbon. And at the end of that video I said about getting hold of some other cheap bourbons from other locations, other places, and doing a comparison, just because this one was so good and for the money. I thought, well, maybe we've been missing out. So I went to Aldi's and paid $14.99 for this Samuel Joe's. Now this is bottled in France, made in Kentucky, USA. No age statement. The only thing it does say is that it's a Kentucky straight bourbon, matured in white oak casks, and again bottled in France. I'll put that to one side there. Then I went to Morrisons. This is John Lee. What was this? £17.75. Again, this is bottled in France, I believe it says. In fact, this one mentions it's Bardonnay, which is a French pronunciation of the word Bardonnette, but I guess the French say Bardonnay, as they often do everything so differently. But again, bottled in France, so I'll leave that one there for the second. You'll get where I'm going with this in a minute. And this is Dixie Pete's. Now this is Morrison's own version. Kentucky straight bourbon again, and guess where this one's bottled? France. Now I'm going to try to show you these bottles as best I can. Now one thing you can see about all three of these is that I can't tell the difference between the colour of these three. There's a hell of a lot of similarity in the labels. Now I say similarity, it doesn't say the same thing, but if you look, it's just black, gold, greys, there's shades of grey in all of them, and they've all got identical bottles, identical in every way, same shoulder, same bottle shape, everything. The caps, now Samuel Joe's, John Lee have got some nice fancy printing on them, but whereas the Kentucky Pete's, it's got nothing, it's just a standard black cap. Now I should point out actually that this one, the Western Gold, is actually bottled in Germany, so again completely different, and from the colour of it completely different in comparison to them, and of course it's a 5-year-old. Now I should say that Lidl do Lidl's have their own white label, which they state is 3 years old, and on the back of one of these, this one, the Dixie Pete's, this one states it's 3 years old. The other two have got no age statement to them. Now I've tried them to varying degrees. This one was the most recent one I've got, and I actually sat down and I tried all three of them together, not in any sort of blind, but just a taste test, just to see which I thought stood out as opposed to the rest. Maybe they look the same, maybe they've come in the same bottles, but maybe they're from a different distiller. And Bardonnay have got it contract distilled from different distilleries, brought it across to be bottled in France. I mean, Bardonnay are famous as a brandy manufacturer in France, I should point out, but they own a bottling plant, and they work for lots of companies within Europe, selling lots of different liquor. So is it basically the same liquid in each one? Well, if I start off with Samuel Joe's, which is the cheapest one out of the lineup, at $14.99. This one is a standard. Okay, maybe it could be a 3-year-old. I'm guessing because of the colour between them and the fact that there's no difference, and you can see a difference with the 5-year-old, and I'm guessing a 4-year-old will be slightly darker, but again that's dependent on where it's stored in a rick house. But the Samuel Joes, it's nothing more than a standard bourbon, which when you get down to this price range, let's really get to the meat and potatoes of it. And the meat and potatoes is, would you sip it on its own or over ice, whichever you prefer, or would you just use it as a mixer? Well, Samuel Joe's, out of all three of these, is the most basic of them all. They all share the same DNA. They're all basically, they've got the same fundamental smells, aroma, there might be a slight variation between them, but it is only slight. I sat them, allowed them to open for 10 to 15 minutes, kept sniffing them in that time, kept tasting them in that time, and there was a slight variation. Now, Dixie Pete's, I thought that one was a bit sweeter than the Samuel Joe's. The John Lee, I thought that one had a bit more woodiness to it. There was a bit more oak to it. But basically they were just variations on a theme. And much in the same way as I will state, obviously, that Samuel Joe's is nothing better than for mixing with Coke or Dr. Pepper's is another suggestion as well. That's really basically all they're good for. Sipping them, there's nothing that you would dislike about sipping it. There's nothing that will make you go back. In fact, excuse me, if you're anything like me, you have a sip of this, and by the time you finished it, you're like, I know exactly what I want now, and it's something from my drinks cabinet over there. I fancy a bourbon with a bit more depth to it and a bit more oomph to it. They do have the basics of a bourbon, aroma and taste, and that basics is just like a sweet oak and a sweetish caramel or butterscotch, and it is just the barest of minimum. I mean, to say that they're probably just one step up from pure grain spirit, corn whiskey, corn whatever, you know, it's not far from the truth. Now these two, alright, there's slight variations between them, but these two, they are basically the same thing. I cannot see a colour difference between them. I'm holding them here now. I cannot see it. I'll put it up for you so you can. Let me hold it that way. Maybe you can see a difference. I can't, but I'll be honest with you. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they are the same. And the other thing is as well, it could just be bottling variation, batch drift as they call it. You know, they could all be from one distiller in Kentucky, and they all could just be slight variations, batch drift between each batch as it came across. No doubt it was distilled and aged in Kentucky, and then proofed down with hopefully Kentucky spring water, but there's so many variations between each batch. One could have been fall, one could have been spring, one could have been fall the year before. And to be truthful with you, at this level, I don't think, you know, anybody that was taste testing it, master blender or whatever, would probably okay it for those slight variations that we have between the three. So my own opinion is that if you don't mind drinking a bourbon and Coke, or you know, you're fond of a Jack and Coke, whatever, these are probably a good substitute for doing that. When I compare it to things like Jim Beam, now I'm not one for Jim Beam. I don't mind it, I will drink it, I don't find it awful. I do find the nutty aroma and the flavour profile that it has to be a bit distracting. It's not what I look for in a bourbon. It doesn't. I don't find it that off-putting, but by the same token, it's not something I do look for. Now, would I prefer this over the white label Jim Beam? Yes, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. If you're mixing up a Coke, you want a bourbon and Coke. Hey, I think personally these three would be a good viable alternative and a better alternative than a white label Jim Beam. Would I have it as a viable alternative to a Jack and Coke? Yes and no. I do like Jack Daniels. I'm not a great number 7 drinker. I much prefer everything else that they have in their range. Even some of their ryes I like as well. But I don't mind when I go out anywhere. I don't mind having a Jack and Coke. In fact, most of the places I go to, if I go to a pub or whatever, they don't have a great selection of bourbon. So having a Jack and Coke is just an easy solution. I know I like it, you know, so it's a great drink to have out and about. When I'm at home, I don't drink Jack and Coke. I don't have Jack Daniels number 7 in my collection. I really don't. I only drink it when I'm out. But I do like it. I do really like it. You know, I don't mind it at all. You know, it doesn't upset me if, you know, I'm out and I can only have a Jack and Coke. That's not a problem at all. So I think it all depends on what you are. If you're a Jim Beam drinker, stick with Jim Beam. If you're a Jack Daniels drinker, stick with Jack Daniels. But if you're like me, you like something that's a little bit different, a bit more neutral. I mean, for all that I moaned about the fact that Jim Beam has that nutty profile to him, Jack Daniels has that banana bread profile to it, which I don't mind. You know, I don't actively look for it, but I actually quite like it. You know, so having like a single barrel Jack Daniels and that banana bread note comes forward both on the nose and on the taste palate, I don't mind that at all. I quite enjoy it now. I did find it a bit off-putting once upon a time, but not so much now. Whereas Jim Beam, that nuttiness, given a choice, I'll step away. In fact, given a choice between Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, old number 7, and Jim Beam, white label, Jack Daniels wins all the time. You know, because I don't mind that profile. But if you was having a barbecue or a meat picnic, that's another way of looking at it. But if you was having a barbecue in your back garden, got loads of family and friends round, just wanted something just to slosh in with your Coke for you and everybody else, just to have a good time. 80 proof, you're never going to have any worries about that. Hey, it's a perfect thing. It is a perfect thing. And if I'm being totally honest, at $14.99 for the Samuel Joe's, you know, it's the better option than the others. I mean, one of them's £17 and the other one's $17.75. So Samuel Joe's, even though it was the base one out of the two had slight variations both in sweetness and in oakiness, but it was only just slight. I mean, you might prefer those with a Coke anyway, and I'm going to find out if I do, because I've now got 3 bottles of non-sipping bourbon that I'm going to be drinking with Coke. But the other thing with these is that if I'm having an evening where I'm going to run a blind, I like something to adjust my palate before going to a blind. I don't like going into a blind cold. Any one of these, you know, it would be a great way just to have a little shot of, you know, a little pour of before going into a blind with some others, so that you can accustom your palate and your nose, and you've got a baseline to work from. So, you know, you could turn around and say to yourself, well, you know, in an evening on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and you're planning on having just a couple of pours, start off with one of these. Hey, it will set your palate, and it will make you realise the other things that you are drinking. You'd appreciate them far more because they've got a lot more depth. So, to sum up, out of all of the cheap unbranded bourbons that you can get from Aldi's, John Lee, that's Morrisons, and this one is Sainsburys, and from that's Aldi, this is Lidl's. My recommendation for a sipping bourbon is definitely this one. I know I said it on the last video, it's called Western Gold and it is gold. This is, sipping on this is great. If I had this with Coke instead of a Jack and Coke, I'd be happy. I'm being totally truthful, totally honest. It hasn't got the flavour profile that a Jack Daniels has got, but it's got enough of a profile that you taste it in the Coke. Whereas these would be a background note. But this is a good quality sipping bourbon. So, my opinion is, if you just want something to mix with, as a mixer, with whatever you're going to mix it with, I mean, any one of these three would do. I mean, if you just want something basic, £15, go for this one all day long. You know, the others, slight variations on the same theme, and as far as I can see, they're bottled, they're in the same bottles, same style bottles. They were all done at a plant in France, a bottling plant in France. So as far as I can see, they're all basically the same with slight batch variation. And in fact, I suppose if I was to go back in maybe 6 months' time and buy another bottle of Samuel Joe's, that might be sweeter than these or more oakier than that, because again, it's that batch drift. So it's you pay your money, you take your chances. But basically, we're looking at a 3-year-old bourbon, distilled and aged in Kentucky, and then just bottled in some plant in France and punted out to the supermarkets. Now, before I go, let me move these out of the way. Before I go, when I was buying my bottle from Sainsburys, I was having a look around for it, which was was it a John Lee Dixie Peats? That's right, Dixie Peats. When I was buying this one from Sainsburys, £17, having a look around, and I managed to find another little bargain, and I thought I'd bring it to your attention. And since I've got it at this price, I've noticed that Tesco's have just put it on special offer as well for the same price, and they've got it going until I think it's the 14th of July, that's 2025. If you're watching this video way in the future, you've missed that. I hate to ruin your day, but it's this. The Jack Daniels Old Number 7 McLaren Special Edition. It's this year's, the 2025 edition. Now I know they've been doing this for a few years. I've never bothered with it normally. Saw it for £20. It's normally about £28. And it is 86 proof. So it's a step up from the standard Jack, Black Jack, the Old Number 7. So I thought to myself, I'll get it. I don't mind number 7, and if it turns out it's not anything special, I can always just, again, mix it with Coke or anything. But I tried this. Now, the 86 proof, if you're a Jack Daniels drinker, you probably already know this. They did a distiller's special edition where they had every distiller for the last 200 years or whatever that worked for the firm. They had a special bottle, I believe they were all litre bottles, but they had a special bottle with a special label on it and a special box for it, and they were all 86 proof. They also did the Red Dog Saloon and the White Rabbit Saloon, which are 2 bars that are in Lynchburg in Tennessee, near to where the Jack Daniels distillery is. They're run by the distillery. They were part owned, or in fact I'm sure that the history of Jack Daniels is linked to these bars. So they brought that out as a commemorative, and again that was at 86 proof. Now these bottles vary in price, and the bottles themselves, not the contents, have become somewhat collectible. So the prices can vary, but the liquid inside is all 86 proof. Now there is no special characteristics that they speak about, what they've done with the bottle, the liquid, whether they've aged it for X amount of years or anything special at all. As far as I can tell, and if anybody knows any different, please educate me. put it in the comments so that I know. But I've not been able to find out anything different than the fact that it is basically just blackjack, Jack Daniel's number 7. Instead of it being 80 proof, it's 86 proof. So like I said, saw it, £20, and I thought, do you know what, it's normally about £28 I've seen it for. Tesco's had it for 22 on special offer, and like I said, they've just reduced it to another £2 until next month. And I thought, do you know what, I'll try it. Got back, now I'll take the bottle out, might as well. There we are. So you can have a better look at the bottle. Now, got back, you can see I've had a few pours out of it. I thought I'll give it a go. Do you know what, I was pleasantly surprised. This 86 proof, I mean their Sinatra, which is 150 quid, ridiculous. Nice box, 1 litre bottle, 90 proof, old number 7. Don't ask me, I just don't understand it. I mean, it's that Jack Daniel's collectability, that's all I can put it down to. But anyway, getting back on track, this is 86 proof, so this is actually nearer to the Sinatra Select at 90 proof than it is to old number 7 Blackjack at the 80 proof. It's 86 proof, so it's nearer to 90 rather than 80. Do you know what? This was really fine. I should point out, I absolutely adore Jack Daniel's single barrels. I've got a 90 proof, I've got a 100 proof, and I've got the barrel strength version as well. They are wonderful. I wholeheartedly recommend anybody that's into bourbon to get them. I mean, people go, oh, it's a Tennessee whiskey. I'm not going to get into that argument. As far as I'm concerned, it's made from the same stuff that the rest of everybody makes bourbon from. The mellow process is the same thing that certain other bourbon companies do. Evan Williams do exactly the same process. They're a bourbon. Again, they're made in Kentucky, so they don't class themselves as a Tennessee whiskey. But getting back to this, again, I do have a tendency to waffle off on this tangent sometimes, but this is great. I've really enjoyed this. The banana bread note is there. It's got the sweetness, but not too sweet. There's enough of a bite to it as well at the 86 proof to balance that sweetness that it has. A great bottle, and for £20, I mean, considering that Blackjack is what, £19.50, £19, for a standard 700ml bottle, this is a bloody good, for 50p, a pound more, this is a bloody good bottle to have. Enjoying it. In fact, to be truthful with you, I had a bottle of the Bonded, Jack Daniel's Bonded, and I prefer this to the Bonded. The Bonded was a bit too harsh, and I got that because I've got a single barrel at 100 proof, and I thought, oh, if it's like that, it might be worth having. Do you know what? Didn't enjoy it at all. Not as much as I should have. It just seemed a lot rough around the edges, and I couldn't help but think to myself, if that's what they're going for in a blended, I mean, you've got to remember it's a blended whiskey for a start. They batch make it, so they're trying to get a certain profile, and if that's the profile they're going for, well, it's not the profile that I want. But this is definitely the profile I want. This had a lot more in common with a single barrel select, the 90 proof single barrel select, than I would have believed, and anybody would have told me that I would have believed. So, like I say, Sainsbury's have got it for £20. They haven't got it advertised on the website. I only found it by going in store, literally to pick up the other cheap bottle. So hey, there was something good that I got out of it eventually. And Tesco's have got it, like I said, on offer until midway through July. So, and I do think it's worth getting it, especially if you're a Jack Daniel's fan. For the extra money, excuse me, for the extra money you'd pay in comparison to a bottle of Blackjack, number 7, I think it's worth it, definitely, 100%. Now, well, I think that's about it. So, well, right. So, for all of you out there, Thanks very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And be lucky. And until next time, take care.